I am reading the big book of Alcoholic Anonymous, and I am replacing the word alcoholism with addiction because I think it works the same way. So let's begin. Most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. The persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. We learn that we have had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. The delusion that we are like other people, or presently maybe, has to be smashed. We alcoholics are men and women who have lost the ability to control our drinking. We know that no real alcoholic ever recovers control. All of us felt at times that we were regaining control, but such intervals, usually brief, were inevitably followed by still less control, which led in time to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. We are convinced to a man that alcoholics of our type are in the grip of a progressive illness. Over any considerable period, we get worse and never better. What I'm getting from this part here, the idea that no person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. And I see this a lot in my time in fitness because everybody loves to think, every one of us loves to think that we are equally strong as anybody else. Because there is this pressure, right? There's this pressure that other people are performing of the same standard, and therefore I must at least perform on the same level, on the same standard as well. That is the idea. and and the problem with that idea is that it's completely false. It is false because everybody, all of us, what we expect to be the norm is not actually the norm. What we think of as exemplary is not actually exemplary, it's just a front. It's a front that everybody else is putting on because everybody else also thinks that a life should be a certain way. Just look at Instagram, just look at Facebook. Where on Facebook, where on social media do people talk about problems? No, they just talk about their highlights, the show reel of their life. Even if somebody don't feel happy, is completely miserable, so many people are constantly just trying to they spend money, they spend time, they put in a lot of effort just to make it so that their life appears to be good. And so in fitness, nobody loves to think that oh, actually I have less willpower. Oh, actually I have less control. So in this way, many people who are trying to lose weight are constantly creating a story. And this story is the story of, oh no lah, I can actually if I really want to. But very few people actually willing to admit that they have no control. But in fact, the first step is to just admit that we are having a problem. And this doesn't just go for food only. Obviously, it goes for so many other things. Gambling addiction, drug addiction, porn addiction, I don't know, like relationship addiction, yeah, Netflix addiction, gaming addiction, shopping addiction, coffee addiction, any and all sorts of addiction. Most of us, we just spend so much time justifying why the addiction is okay, as opposed to working towards overcoming, as opposed to working towards admitting, taking that first step. We are like men who have lost their legs, they never grow new ones. So at the beginning chapters of this book, what Alcoholics Anonymous says is that alcoholism is a physical illness, is a sickness, and it is kind of like this. When if we grow up not being fed sugar, not being fed substances, we would do very well. Like, it would be so easy for us to say no to all these foods. But because we have been conditioned, and we have been conditioned for so long, to eat these kind of foods, to take on certain kinds of substances, and certain habits have been fostered into us, that the problem is no longer psychological, the problem is literally physical. The body has grown accustomed, the body has grown adapted to a certain kind of lifestyle, to a certain kind of food intake, that when the body doesn't get this kind of food intakes, the body go crazy. And so we are like men who have lost their legs, they never grow new ones. Absolutely accurate. And I am absolutely shocked. Why haven't I picked up this book before? There are so many parallels between what this book is saying and what I have personally been experiencing all my life. Neither does there appear to be any kind of treatment which make alcoholics of our kind like other men. We have tried every imaginable remedy. In some instances, there have been brief recovery, followed always by a still worse relapse. Physicians who are familiar with alcoholism agree there is no such thing as making a normal drinker out of an alcoholic. Science may one day accomplish this, but it hasn't done so yet. Despite all we can say, many who are real alcoholics are not going to believe they are in that class. By every form of self-deception and experimentation, they will try to prove themselves exceptions to the rule, therefore non-alcoholic. If anyone who is showing inability to control his drinking can do the right about face and drink like a gentleman, our hats are off to him. Heaven knows we have tried hard enough and long enough to drink like other people. Here are some of the methods we have tried. Drinking beer only. Limiting the number of drinks. Never drinking alone. Never drinking in the morning. Drinking only at home. Never having it in the house. Never drinking during business hours. Drinking only at parties. Switching from scotch to brandy. Drinking only natural wines. Agreeing to resign if ever drunk on the job. Taking a trip. Not taking a trip. Swearing off forever with and without a solemn oath, taking more physical exercise, reading inspirational books, going to health farms and sanitariums, accepting voluntary commitment to asylums. We could increase the list ad infinitum. Again, the parallels are astonishing. Drinking beer only. How does it look like in nutrition? Eat no carbs. Just eat vegetables and meat, or have low fat, or do any of the 1001 different kinds of nutrition programs that cuts off everything else. Limiting the number of drinks, calorie counting, never drinking alone, do dieting with friends, right? That's the parallel. Never drinking in the morning, intermittent fasting. Drinking only at home. Okay, so that means that whenever go out, take care. Whenever at home, splurge. Or whenever at home, take care. Whenever go out, splurge. Never drinking during business hours. Drinking only at parties. Never drinking during business hours. What does it mean? It means very simple. Monday to Friday, take care of your food. Saturday, Sunday, splurge. Cheat days. Drinking only at parties. Cheat days. Switching from scotch to brandy. Opt, and what it means to a healthy lifestyle is to opt for a slightly less damaging form of, or at least a slightly perceived damaging form of substance, and having that instead of having something which we consider to be truly dangerous. Agreeing to resign if ever drunk on the job. Well, that's kind of like saying, let me take a bet, right? If I don't see XYZ kind of results, I will donate X amount to charity. Taking more physical exercise, self-explanatory. Reading inspirational books, going to health farms and sanitariums, hiring a personal trainer, going to coaches, signing up to the gym, swearing it off forever with and without a solemn oath. This is typical. We see it all the time. Going on Facebook, typing a long post, doing a Facebook Live like this to swear off and to promise and commit to the world that I am going to go through a body transformation. All of this stuff, I've done it before. We do not like to pronounce an individual as alcoholic, but you can quickly diagnose yourself. Step over to the nearest barroom, and try some controlled drinking. Try to drink and stop abruptly. Try it more than once. This is a good point. Because if you are a food addict and you go to the local cafe, the nearest cafe, and you order the cake, right? Can you stop at one bite? I can't. If I order the cake and the cake is right in front of me, I take one bite. Do I have enough self-control to just stop at one bite? Or must I finish it all? It's so often that people say, I don't want to take care of my nutrition because I want to have food freedom. I want to be free to eat what I want. But there's a complete irrationality with this, because if for the everyone who says I want to have food freedom, if I bring to that person's favorite food in the world, can they have the choice to not eat it? And the answer is no. They have no choice but to eat it. There is no freedom over there. So likewise over here, the parallel between addiction, alcoholism, and nutrition and all these other damaging behaviors, can we indulge a little bit and we just do a cold hard stop? And for most people, the answer is no, absolutely not. It will not take long for you to decide if you're honest with yourself about it. It may be worth a bad case of jitters if you get a full knowledge of a condition. Though there is no way of proving it, we believe that early in our drinking careers, most of us could have stopped drinking. But the difficulty is that few alcoholics have enough desire to stop while there is yet time. We have heard of a few instances where people who showed definite signs of alcoholism were able to stop for a long period because of an overpowering desire to do so. This should be good. A man of 30 was doing a great deal of spree drinking. He was very nervous in the morning after these bouts and quieted himself with more liquor. He was ambitious to succeed in business, but saw that he would get nowhere if he drank at all. Once he started, he had no control whatsoever. He made up his mind that until he had been successful in business and had retired, he would not touch another drop. An exceptional man, he remained bone dry for 25 years and retired at the age of 55 after a successful and happy business career. Then he fell victim to a belief which practically every alcoholic has, that his long period of sobriety and self-discipline had qualified him to drink as other men. Out came his carpet slippers and a bottle. In 2 months, he was hospitalized, puzzled, and humiliated. He tried to regulate his drinking for a while, making several trips to the hospital in the meantime. Then, gathering all his forces, he attempted to stop altogether and found he could not. Every means of solving his problem which money could buy was at his disposal. Every attempt failed. Though a robust man at retirement, he went to pieces quickly and was dead within 4 years. This case contains a powerful lesson. Most of us have believed that if we remain sober for a long stretch, we could thereafter drink normally. But here is a man who at 55 years found he was just where he had left off at 30. We had seen the truth demonstrated again and again. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Commencing to drink after a period of sobriety, we are in a short time as bad as ever. If we are planning to stop drinking, there must be no reservation of any kind, nor any lurking notion that someday we will be immune to alcohol. This is literally the life story of every dieter ever. Ever. Someone starts dieting, someone starts taking care of their food. The belief is this. The belief is that if I sustain my diet long enough for me to attain the kind of health that I want, the kind of fitness, the kind of body that I want, after that time, I would then be able to eat normally without any repercussion. False. It never happens. It never happens. And I am a living example of this. I have been through this at least 10 times over 8 years. And the moment I stop, the moment I stop having that vigilance, the moment I stop being careful, all kinds of control just completely gone. So over here, most of us have believed that if we remain sober for a long stretch, we could thereafter drink normally. If I can replace this word, most of us have believed that if we practice healthy habits for a long stretch, we could thereafter live normally. But that is completely wrong. It doesn't work that way. Therefore, if we are planning to stop any form of addiction, if we are planning to stop any form of negative habits, there must be no reservation of any kind or any notion that someday we will be immune to the bad habits. And that's the reason why Alcoholics Anonymous, they always say that I am recovered, but I am never cured. It is this particular way that gets addicts to stay sober for the rest of their life. It is not that they are cured of the problem. The problem is there. We are like people who have lost their limbs. You may have healed from the injury, but you will never regain the limb. And this is the problem, which is both mental and physical. Not to mention, one of the key things that alcohol degrades is brain cells. One of the key things that all of the things like carbs, let's say carbs, okay? The more carbs you eat, the more reliant you are on carbs. The more sugar you eat, the more addicted you become to sugar. The more you smoke, the more you're dependent you are on smoking. Any and all forms of substances and addiction, the more we use it, the more we become dependent on it. Young people may be encouraged by this man's experience to think that they can't stop, as he did, on their own willpower. Willpower. This is the one word that everybody thinks is the cure, but it is not. We doubt if many of them can do it because none will really want to stop, and hardly one of them because of the peculiar mental twist they already acquired. Will find he can win out. Several of our crowd, men of 30 or less, had been drinking only a few years, but they found themselves as helpless as those who had been drinking 20 years. To be gravely affected, one does not necessarily have to drink a long time, nor take the quantities some of us have. This is particularly true of women. Potential female alcoholics often turn into the real thing and are gone beyond recall in a few years. Certain drinkers who would be greatly insulted if called alcoholics are astonished at their inability to stop. We are familiar with the symptoms, see large numbers of potential alcoholics among young people everywhere, but try and get them to see it. And this is the reason why I decided to share my own problems. Because to go out there and tell people, look, you have a problem. That's not going to work, in it. Because it is an unfortunate truth that whatever the negative habit is, whatever the bad habits are, it can be procrastination, it can be anger management, anger issues, it can be drinking, it can be smoking, it can be any form of addiction whatsoever. It may be certain tendencies to get into wrong kind of relationship. Whatever the problem is, people will not. We all us humans, we will never realize the severity of the problem until we are experiencing it firsthand. And only then we start to say, yeah, maybe I need to do something about it. Maybe. And now after that, we need to go through this hassle of, but maybe negotiating, right? Negotiating with the universe. Do I really need to go this route? Maybe there's some other route. Maybe there's some other way that we can do about it. But there's no other way. There's only the hard way. And while all this deliberation and thinking and disbelieving, all these things, all these things are happening, and it's costing our life more and more and more and more and more. As we look back, we feel we had gone on drinking many years beyond the point where we could quit on our own willpower. If anybody questions whether he has entered this dangerous area, let him try leaving liquor alone for 1 year. Oh, shit, yeah. So let me reinterpret this in the realm of nutrition. If anyone questions whether he has entered this dangerous area of being helpless in the face of food, let him try leaving junk food alone for 1 year. If he is a real alcoholic in very far advance, there is scant chance of success. In the early days of our drinking, we occasionally remain sober for a year or more, becoming serious drinkers again later. And that's correct, because I see this after thousands and thousands of people that I have coached. I've seen this in myself. I've seen this in everyone I coach. After a year, after 2 years, after 3 years, whatever habits, whatever people promise to stay away from, it comes back on. Though you may be able to stop for a considerable period, you may yet to be a potential alcoholic. We think few to whom this book will appeal can stay dry anything like a year. I have difficulty staying away from certain foods for more than a day. Some will be drunk the day after making their resolutions, most of them within a few weeks. For those who are unable to drink moderately, the question is how to stop altogether. We are assuming, of course, that the reader desires to stop. Yes, I desire to stop. I want my food to be pretty damn boring and bland. That's what I want, but I can't do it. Whether such a person can quit upon a non-spiritual basis depends upon the extent to which he has already lost the power to choose whether he will drink or not. Because I never would have agreed with this statement, but now I'm feeling it. Why is it, even after so long of me working on myself, you would think that I have 100% control of myself by now? But the answer is no. And the more I learn, the more I study, right? The more I learn about nutrition, the more ammo I'm giving my brain, my mind to use against me to tell me why it's okay. I still remember there was one point where I was reading this book called Carb Backloading, and it is a book about how this guy, this rocket scientist, literally, or physicist, discovered the secret of how to eat carbs late into the night and still get six pack abs. I was obsessed with that book because I thought it gave me an answer. All it did was derail me from a nutrition plan which was already working and got me hooked in denial for 1.5 years, thinking that it is me that is the problem. There are so many times in my life where, in terms of nutrition and fitness, everything was just solid on point. But because of my desire to eat those other stuff again, right? I found some form of protocol which seemed to skirt around the undesirables. And every single time, the moment I start, I cannot stop until I look myself in the mirror one day. It's, oh my god, I'm fat again. I'm gonna continue. How then shall we help our readers determine to their own satisfaction whether they are one of us? I'm convinced, bro. I'm like one of you already. The experiment of quitting for a period of time will be even helpful, but we think we can render an even greater service to alcoholic sufferers and perhaps to the medical fraternity. So we shall describe some of the mental states that precede a relapse. So we shall describe some of the mental states that precede a relapse into drinking, for obviously this is the crux of the problem. What sort of thinking dominates an alcoholic who repeats time after time the desperate experiment of the first drink? Friends who have reasoned with him after a spree which has brought him to the point of divorce or bankruptcy are mystified when he walks directly into a saloon. Why does he? Of what is he thinking? Our first example is the man we shall call Jim. This man has a charming wife and family. He inherited a lucrative automobile agency. He had a commendable World War record. He is a good salesman. Everybody likes him. He is an intelligent man, normal so far as we can see, except for a nervous disposition. He did no drinking until he was 35. In a few years, he became so violent when intoxicated that he had to be committed. On leaving the asylum, he came into contact with us. We told him what we knew of alcoholism and the answer we had found. He made a beginning. His family was reassembled and he began to work as a salesman for the business he had lost through drinking. All went well for a time, but he failed to enlarge his spiritual life. To his consternation, he found himself drunk half a dozen times in rapid succession. On each of these occasions, we worked with him, reviewing carefully what had happened. He agreed he was a real alcoholic and in a serious condition. He knew he faced another trip to the asylum if he kept on. Moreover, he would lose his family for whom he had deep affection. Yet he got drunk again. We asked him to tell us exactly how it happened. This is his story. I came to work on Tuesday morning. I remember I felt irritated that I had to be a salesman for a concern I once owned. I had a few words with the boss, but nothing serious. Then I decided to drive into the country and see one of my prospects for a car. On the way, I felt hungry, so I stopped at a roadside place where they have a bar. I had no intention of drinking. I just thought I would get a sandwich. I also had a notion that I might find a customer for a car at this place, which was familiar for I had been going to it for years. I had eaten there many times during the months I was sober. I sat down at the table and ordered a sandwich, and a glass of milk. Still no thought of drinking. I ordered another sandwich and decided to have another glass of milk. Suddenly, the thought crossed my mind that if I were to put an ounce of whiskey in my milk, it couldn't hurt me on a full stomach. Uh, this is exactly what I was going through this afternoon. Except I didn't order whiskey. Mine is not an alcohol problem. Mine is a sugar problem. I had lunch. All I wanted was fish, vegetables. Like it's a deep fried fish, by the way. It's a sweet and sour fish. Sweet and sour fish, vegetables, and water. That's all I want, right? And then after that, as I eat and I eat and I eat, I thought, oh, it might be nice if I just put some chili. There's some chili flakes on the side. So I put chili flakes on my rice, and I had, wow, that's amazing. It tastes really, really good. And then it became very hot, and then the thought crossed my mind. Well, I've been really good yesterday. I have my 2 liters of smoothie. It couldn't hurt for me to just have something to quench the heat of my tongue, right? So guess what I did? I ordered a tea ice, iced tea with milk, sugar, fat. Yeah. I ordered a whiskey and poured into the milk. I vaguely sensed I was not being any too smart, but felt reassured as I was taking the whiskey on a full stomach. The experiment went so well that I ordered another. I vaguely sensed I was not being any too smart, but felt reassured as I was taking the whiskey on a full stomach. The experiment went so well that I ordered another whiskey and poured it into more milk. That didn't seem to bother me, so I tried another. Thus started one more journey to the asylum for Jim. Here was the threat of commitment, the loss of family and position, to say nothing of that intense mental and physical suffering which drinking always caused him. He had much knowledge about himself as an alcoholic, yet all reasons for not drinking were easily pushed aside in favor of the foolish idea that he could take whiskey if only he mixed it with milk. Whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insane. I am insane, guys. And I don't think I'm the only one. I know it may sound stupid. I know how silly it sounds. Why am I comparing alcoholism with unhealthy food? I know how stupid it sounds. But if it is really stupid, why do we keep doing it? Whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity. How can such a lack of proportion of the ability to think straight be called anything else? Okay, maybe for me it's a bit more serious. I have leaky gut. I'm suffering from allergy, eczema, and all this stuff. But my substance may not be as dangerous as alcohol, but my substance is a substance nonetheless. You may think this an extreme case. To us, it is not far-fetched, for this kind of thinking has been characteristic of every single one of us. We have sometimes reflected more than Jim upon the consequences, but there was always the curious mental phenomenon that parallel with our sound reasoning. There inevitably ran some insanely trivial excuse for taking the first drink. Our sound reasoning failed to hold us in check. The insane idea won out. Next day, we would ask ourselves, in all earnestness and sincerity, how it could have happened. In some circumstances, we have gone out deliberately to get drunk, feeling ourselves justified by nervousness, anger, worry, depression, jealousy, or the like. Boom! Every single time there is stress, every single time there is any form of celebration, right? Oh, I did well, time to eat. I don't do well, time to eat, right? Something happened, right? I got into an argument. Okay, let's make ourselves feel better. But even in this type of beginning, we are obliged to admit that our justification for a spree was insanely insufficient in the light of what always happened. Yeah. We now see that we began to drink deliberately instead of casually. There was little serious or effective thought during the period of premeditation of what the terrific consequences might be. Our behavior is as absurd and incomprehensible with respect to the first drink as that of an individual with a passion for jaywalking. He gets a thrill out of skipping in front of fast-moving vehicles. He enjoys himself for a few years in spite of friendly warnings. Up to this point, you would label him as a foolish chap having queer ideas of fun. Luck then deserts him, and he is slightly injured several times in succession. You would expect him, if he were normal, to cut it out. Presently, he is hit again, and this time has a fractured skull. Within a week after leaving the hospital, a fast-moving trolley car breaks his arm. He tells you he has decided to stop jaywalking for good, but in a few weeks, he breaks both legs. On through the years, this conduct continues, accompanied by his continual promises to be careful or to keep off the streets altogether. Finally, he can no longer work, his wife gets a divorce, and he is held up to ridicule. He tries every known means to get the jaywalking idea out of his head. He shuts himself up in an asylum, hoping to mend his ways. But the day he comes out, he races in front of a fire engine, which breaks his back. Such a man would be crazy, wouldn't he? You may think our illustration is too ridiculous, but is it? We who have been through the ringer have to admit if we substituted alcoholism for jaywalking, the illustration would fit us exactly. Exactly. It's not approximately, it's exactly. I am not gonna eat sugar anymore. Okay, boom, go eat again. Got fat, repeat a few times, blood pressure going higher, cholesterol going higher, pre-diabetic starting to happen. No, I need to swear it off. Boom, 6 months of good behavior. Go back in. There you go. After come out, go back to sugar again, go back to fat again, go back to alcohol again. However intelligent we may have been in other aspects, where alcohol has been involved, we have been strangely insane. It's strong language, but isn't it true? Some of you are thinking, yes, what you tell us is true, but it doesn't fully apply. We admit we have some of these symptoms, but we have not gone to the extremes you fellows did, nor are we likely to, for we understand ourselves so well. After what you have told us that such things cannot happen again. We have not lost everything in life through drinking, and we certainly do not intend to. Thanks for the information. And here's the author's response. That may be true of certain non-alcoholic people who, through drinking foolishly and heavily at the present time, are able to stop or moderate because their brains and bodies have not been damaged as ours were. Guys, in this whole entire world, we can hardly meet anybody who hasn't been damaged by junk food, who have never been damaged by unhealthy habits. Even if you don't smoke, you have at some point breathed in secondhand smoke. But the actual potential alcoholic, with hardly an exception, will be absolutely unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. I'm going to repeat myself, but the actual or potential alcoholic, with hardly any exception, will be absolutely unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. Yes, I am living proof of this. Guys, because I know after having fitness certifications, nutrition certifications, right? After being involved in the personal development industry for so damn long, after having spent more than $100,000 on personal development, you would think that I have the ability to stop whatever it is, or to stop my unhealthy habits from self-knowledge alone. But there's a problem in that this only happens when I am aware. This is a point we wish to emphasize and re-emphasize, to smash home upon our alcoholic readers as it has been revealed to us out of bitter experience. Let us take another illustration. Fred is a partner in a well-known accounting firm. His income is good. He has a fine home, is happily married, and the father of promising children of college age. He has so attractive a personality that he makes friends with everyone. If ever there was a successful businessman, it is Fred. To all appearance, he is a stable, well-balanced individual, yet he is an alcoholic. We first saw Fred about a year ago in the hospital, where he had gone to recover from a bad case of jitters. It was his first experience of this kind, and was much ashamed of it. Far from admitting he was an alcoholic, though, he told himself he came to the hospital to rest his nerves. The doctor intimated strongly that he might be worse than he realized. For a few days, he was depressed about his condition. He made up his mind to quit drinking altogether. It never occurred to him that perhaps he could not do so. It never occurred to him that perhaps he could not do so in spite of his character and standing. Fred would not believe himself an alcoholic, much less accept a spiritual remedy for his problem. We told him what we knew about alcoholism. He was interested and conceded that he had some of the symptoms, but he was a long way from admitting that he could do nothing about it himself. That's the problem, isn't it? Because we always like to believe that we can handle it ourselves. We just love thinking that. No problem. I don't need to talk about it. I don't need to think about it. I don't need to tell people about it. I don't need to share. I don't need to ask for help. I can handle it myself. And that's the problem. He was positive that this humiliating experience, plus the knowledge he had acquired, would help him sober the rest of his life. Self-knowledge would fix it. We heard no more of Fred for a while. One day, we were told that he was back in the hospital. This time, he was quite shaky. He soon indicated he was anxious to see us. The story he told is most instructive, for here was a chap absolutely convinced he had to stop drinking, who had no excuse for drinking, who exhibited splendid judgment and determination in all his other concerns, yet was flat on his back nevertheless. Let him tell you about it. I was much impressed with what you fellows said about alcoholism, and I frankly did not believe it would be possible for me to drink again. I rather appreciated your ideas about a subtle insanity which precedes the first drink, but I was confident it could not happen to me after what I had learned. Once again, after what I had learned. One of the key things that I keep on telling everybody, including myself, that learning and knowledge alone is pointless. Learning and knowledge alone is pointless. So many people love to go for seminars after seminars, courses after courses, all of this, so that they can finally find a kind of solution to solve. That is, learning is not the solution. I reasoned I was not so far advanced as most of you fellows, that I had been usually successful in licking my other personal problems, and that I would therefore be successful where you men failed. I felt I had every right to be self-confident. that it would only be a matter of exercising my willpower and keeping on guard. In this frame of mind, I went about my business, and for a time, all was well. I had no trouble refusing drinks. I began to wonder if I had not been making too hard work of a simple matter. One day, I went to Washington to present some to present some accounting evidence to a government bureau. I had been out of town before during this particular dry spell, so there was nothing new about it. Physically, I felt fine. Neither did I have any pressing problems or worries. But my business came off well. I was pleased and knew my partners would be too. It was the end of a perfect day. Not a cloud on the horizon. I went to my hotel and leisurely dressed for dinner. As I crossed the threshold of the dining room, the thought came to mind that it would be nice to have a couple of cocktails with dinner. That was all, nothing more. I ordered a cocktail and my meal. Then I ordered another cocktail. After dinner, I decided to take a walk. When I returned to the hotel, it struck me a highball would be fine before going to bed. So I stepped into the bar and had one. I remember having several more that night and plenty next morning. I have a shadowy recollection of being in an airplane bound for New York and of finding a friendly taxicab driver at the landing field instead of my wife. The driver escorted me about for several days. I know little of where I went or what I said and what I did. Then came the hospital with unbearable mental and physical suffering. As soon as I regained my ability to think, I went carefully over that evening in Washington. Not only had I been off guard, I had made no fight whatever against the first drink. This time, I had not thought of the consequences at all. I had commenced to drink as carelessly as though the cocktails were ginger ale. I now remembered what my alcoholic friends told me, how they prophesied that if I had an alcoholic mind, the time and place would come. I would I would drink again. Ah. So guys, if I can change this word here to be I now remembered, if I had a junk food mind, the time and place would come and I would eat again. They had said that though I did raise a defense, it would one day give way before some trivial reason for having a drink. It could be a promotion, it could be a celebration, it could be a barbecue party, it could be a wedding, it could be one of your friends giving birth, it could be one of your friends died, it could be a birth or a death or anything whatsoever, anything in between. But some trivial reason will happen and the bad habits will get triggered once again. Well, just that did happen and more, for what I learned of alcoholism did not occur to me at all. I knew from the moment that I had an alcoholic mind. I saw what that willpower and self-knowledge would not help in those strange mental blank spots. Blank spots. I had never been able to understand people who said that a problem had them hopelessly defeated. I had never been able to understand people who said that a problem had them hopelessly defeated. I knew then, and it was a crushing blow. Two of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me. They grinned. They grinned, which I didn't like so much, and then asked me if I thought myself alcoholic, if I were really licked this time. I had to concede both propositions. They piled on me heaps of evidence to the effect that an alcoholic mentality, such as I had exhibited in Washington, was a hopeless condition. They cited cases out of their own experience by the dozen. This process snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that I could do the job myself. They then outlined the spiritual answer and a program of action, which 100 of them had followed successfully. Though I had been only a nominal churchman, their proposals were not, intellectually, hard to swallow. But the program of action, though entirely sensible, was pretty drastic. It meant I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out of the window. That was not easy. Yeah, guys, that was not easy, but it is necessary because in everything that I learned in personal development, every action that we do is based on who we are, our belief systems, our identity, who we think we are, and all that we think we are is based on the way we see everything. It's the way we see the world, it's the way we see God, it's the way we see our life, everything. It is a certain perception, a conception of how the world works. And it is very deeply rooted. Most people don't even know that it's there. Limiting beliefs are hard enough to spot. Worldviews are in an entire class of their own. But the moment I made up my mind to go through with the process, I had the curious feeling that my alcoholic condition was relief, as in fact it proved to be. Quite as important it was the discovery that spiritual principles would solve all my problems. I have since then brought into a way of living infinitely more satisfying and, I hope, more useful than the life I lived before. My old manner of life was by no means a bad one, but I would not exchange its best moments for the worst I have now. I would not go back to it even if I could. Fred's story speaks for itself. We hope it strikes home to thousands like him. We have felt only the first nip of the ringer. Most alcoholics have to be pretty badly mangled before they really commence to solve their problems. Many doctors and psychiatrists agree with our conclusions. One of these men, staff member of a world-renowned hospital, recently made a statement to some of us. What you say about the general hopelessness of the average alcoholic's plight is, in my opinion, correct. As to two of you men whose stories I have heard, there is no doubt in my mind that you are 100% hopeless apart from divine help. Had you offered yourselves as patients at this hospital, I would not have taken you if I had been able to avoid it. People like you are too heartbreaking. Though not a religious person, I have profound respect for the spiritual approach in such cases as yours. For most cases, there is virtually no other solution. Once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink. Except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human can provide such a defense. His defense must come from a higher power. So that was chapter 3. I'm going to read chapter 4 tomorrow. But let's wrap up what we learned today. What I learned today. The greatest misconception, I think, for myself, is the misconception that I can do anything. Or rather, let's whether it's a misconception or not, we can't be sure. But let's just call it a worldview. Is the worldview is a presupposition that whatever the problem is, I can handle it myself. That is a presupposition, and so far, it hasn't. It worked in many areas of my life, but in many more areas of my life, it doesn't work. At the very least, in the areas that matter. And even if I can work at it myself, now that I think about it, why should I work at it myself? Why? What's the satisfaction of going at it myself? And if I am adamant that okay, I want to go at it myself, then I shouldn't be complaining whenever there's a problem. So that's the first thing I learned. We cannot go at it ourselves. We need to rely on something. We need to rely on a structure outside of ourselves in order to defeat this problem. The second thing I learned, we can be recovered, but we are never cured. This vigilance has to always be there against the bad habits. Because look, I love healthy habits. I've worked on myself enough that I have fallen in love with healthy habits, but I still can't, against all reasoning, right? Against all reasoning, still can't help myself with the bad habits. So the answer is not to find the cure that permanently cures, because there is no cure for an amputated leg. No matter what pill we take, an amputated leg is an amputated leg. it is gone. Right? An amputated leg is gone. No matter what pill we eat, it's not going to grow. It's lost. And for those of us who have been indulging in certain things, we have lost that ability. And so we must look at it in that kind of sense. We must keep an eternal vigilance on it to never let up. And it is because the moment we relax ourselves, all logic and rationale go out the window. And speaking about logic, the third lesson I learned is this: there is no rationale to it. There is no reasoning to it. There's no logic to it. It just is what it is. It is insanity. There is no logic to insanity. No, not the question of what is your why, the question of why are you doing this, or why what do you want, and why, the question of motivation, the question of discipline, all fail because there is no logic in the first place. No amount of self-knowledge, no amount of knowledge about nutrition, about the subject matter will help, because the problem is in and of itself completely and utterly illogical. It is 100% insanity. And in order for us to break free from that, we must come to rely on a power greater than ourselves. And with that, I shall leave you. Whatever it is that you learn, whatever it is that you got today, is whatever it is that you get. I've gotten a lot of value. I'll see you guys tomorrow, where I'll read chapter 4, We Agnostics. That's it, guys. See you tomorrow.